You infiltrated the Italian Mafia. They were waiting for you. It's a Sunday afternoon in Palermo, and you are sitting at a table that has been set for you. Not metaphorically. Literally set. White tablecloth, good china, a bottle of wine opened and breathing. The kind of table that takes 30 minutes to prepare correctly. Someone started preparing it before you arrived. The man across from you is Don Enzo Baresi, 71 years old. Capo Mandamento of the Palermo district for the Cosa Nostra. He has never been convicted of anything. His legal record contains 2 dismissed parking violations and a property dispute from 1987 that was resolved out of court. He is eating pasta. He gestures for you to sit. He says, in Sicilian dialect, "You've been in my city for 14 months. You should eat before you leave. Before you leave. Not if you leave. Before. You sit down." The pasta is rigatoni al ragu. It smells extraordinary. The wine is a Nero di Avola, probably 15 years old. This is not a last meal. The setting is too deliberate, the tone too measured. This is something else, something without a clean category in any training manual you have ever read. This is a man who has known you were coming, let you come, watched you for 14 months, and has now invited you to Sunday lunch to tell you so. You pick up the fork. Because Baresi is 71 years old and has survived this long by reading people, and the correct response to being offered food by a man who could have had you killed any time in the last 14 months is to eat the food. You eat. To understand what this table means, what it cost to get here and what it will cost to leave, you have to go back 21 months. To a briefing room in Rome where a man from the FBI's legal attaché office put 3 photographs on a table and said, "We need someone who can disappear into Sicily." 21 months before the table. You are 41 years old. 15 years with the FBI, the last 6 in the Organized Crime Division. You have worked the Italian-American mob in New York, the 'Ndrangheta in New Jersey, a Camorra-connected construction fraud that ran through 3 American cities. You speak Italian fluently. Your grandmother was born in Agrigento, Sicily, and died in Brooklyn, and between those 2 cities she passed to you a language and a way of reading a room that you have been using professionally for 6 years. The legal attaché in Rome is a man named Caruso. Italian-American, 2nd generation, the kind of operational precision that comes from wanting something badly for a very long time. Caruso puts the photographs on the table. 3 men. 3 generations of the same family. The Baresi family has controlled the Palermo district of the Cosa Nostra for 26 years. The grandfather built it. The father consolidated it. Don Enzo, the youngest, inherited it at 39 and has run it for 32 years with such structural intelligence that the FBI, Interpol, and the Divisione Investigativa Antimafia have collectively spent 18 years building a case that still has one missing element. Caruso says, direct testimonial evidence of Don Enzo's command decisions. We have financial records, surveillance, informant testimony about the organization. What we do not have is a single witness who can testify to Baresi personally issuing an order. Every documented communication runs through intermediaries. He never touches anything directly. He puts a 4th photograph on the table. An aerial view of a Masuria, an old Sicilian farmhouse estate, outside Palermo, surrounded by olive groves and high stone walls. He says, Baresi holds court at this property every Sunday. Lunch. The same ritual for 20 years. The men who matter come to him there. Decisions are made there. If we could put someone at that table, we would have everything. You look at the aerial photograph. Stone walls, olive groves, a table in the courtyard visible in the high-resolution image as a white rectangle. You say, who's been tried before? Caruso is quiet for a moment. He says, 2 insertions. The first lasted 9 days before the officer was identified and extracted. The second lasted 6 weeks. You say, what happened to the second officer? Caruso says, she was extracted safely. The cover was burned. She's in witness protection in another country. You say, the cover burned or Baresi burned it. Caruso looks at you. He says, we don't know. That is the answer that should have made you say no. Instead you pull the folder toward you and open it. Your cover name will be Marco Ferrara. Marco Ferrara. Marco Ferrara is 42 years old. Born in Catania, eastern Sicily. Far enough from Palermo to explain why he is unknown in the city, close enough that the cultural knowledge is native. His father ran a small import business that went under in the 2008 financial crisis. Marco spent his 30s working construction and logistics across mainland Italy, then a brief period in Germany, then returned to Sicily when his mother fell ill. He has been in Palermo for 8 months before you arrive, meaning the cover precedes you by 8 months of documented activity, phone records, a rented apartment on Via Maqueda, a regular table at a cafe near the Bolaro market. The 8 months of documented activity were created by a joint FBI-DIA operation involving 2 Italian agents who lived as Marco Ferrara in rotation, establishing the presence without the person. By the time you arrive and become him permanently, Marco Ferrara has a landlord who recognizes his face, a cafe where his order is remembered, and a reputation in the neighborhood as a quiet man who pays his rent on time. Your entry point is a man named Salvatore Greco. Salvatore is 60 years old, runs a wholesale produce distribution company that supplies restaurants across Palermo, and is the outermost layer of the Baresi organization's legitimate business network. He does not issue orders or receive them. He provides the texture of normality that every criminal organization needs around its edges. The introduction is made through a cooperating witness, a contractor who has done legitimate work for Greco's company and who introduces Marco Ferrara as a reliable logistics man looking for steady work in the city. Your handler is a DIA agent named Pellegrini. Contact happens through a rosticceria on Via Roma. You stop in twice a week for arancini, you pay. The receipt contains a microprint message on the thermal paper readable only under specific light. Your intelligence goes out the same way, written on the back of a market receipt in ink that disappears within 6 hours. The system is slow, cumbersome, and nearly impossible to intercept. Pellegrini chose it specifically because Baresi's organization has, over 30 years, demonstrated the ability to identify electronic surveillance with a consistency that suggests either technical sophistication or a law enforcement source. Pellegrini assumes both. His last instruction before insertion: Sicily is not mainland Italy. The Cosa Nostra did not survive a century of state prosecution by being careless. Every person you meet will have been assessed before you know their name. Do not try to accelerate. Time is not something you spend here. It is something they give you, in increments, based on what you earn. You step off a train at Palermo Centrale on a Tuesday morning in October. Marco Ferrara has been waiting for himself to arrive. What Palermo teaches you? The first thing Palermo teaches you is patience of a specific texture. Not the patience of waiting for something to happen. The patience of being in a place so completely that the place stops noticing you are new to it. This takes longer in Sicily than anywhere else you have worked. The city has a long memory and a slow metabolism for trust. Neighborhoods remember strangers for years. The woman who runs the tabacceria on the corner of your street watches you for 6 weeks before she says good morning first. When she does, it means something. You work for Greco's produce company for the first 4 months. Logistics, routing, scheduling, supplier relationships. The work is genuine and you do it at the level Mori Kenji would have done it, which is to say completely, because competence in a support role is the only currency that moves you toward the center without appearing to try. The Baresi organization structure, as you map it over those 4 months, is a study in deliberate opacity. There are no titles, no explicit hierarchy, no visible chain of command. What there is instead is a system of relationships so old and so embedded in the social fabric of specific Palermo neighborhoods that it functions without explicit structure the way a language functions without anyone consciously applying its grammar. Everyone knows their role. No one says it out loud. The men who matter are recognizable not by any signifier of status, but by the way other men move around them. The slight adjustments in posture, the conversations that pause and resume, the particular quality of deference that in Sicily is so habitual it has become invisible to the people performing it. You learn to read these adjustments. It takes 3 months. In month 5, Greco invites you to a dinner at his home. 12 people. You are the only one there who does not carry, somewhere in their history, a name that connects to the Baresi family. You eat, you drink moderately, you tell a story about your time in Germany that makes 2 men laugh. You do not ask about anyone's work. You do not volunteer your own. Driving home, you realize you have spent the evening doing something that cannot be trained, existing in a room as a specific kind of Sicilian man, one shaped by a particular set of experiences and losses and the particular dark humor that those experiences produce, without performing it. Marco Ferrara existed in that room. Not you doing Marco Ferrara. Marco Ferrara. You put the distinction in the Rosticceria message the next morning. Pellegrini's response. Good. Keep going. Rosario. Month 7. You meet Rosario Baresi. He is Don Enzo's nephew. 38 years old. He manages the organization's relationship with a network of construction contractors across western Sicily. Not the criminal side, the administrative side, the contracts and payments and scheduling that gives the organization's money legitimate channels to move through. He is precise, educated, quietly funny. He studied economics in Bologna and came back to Palermo because, he tells you once, he could not imagine being elsewhere. Sicily is not a place you leave and return to the same, he says. It leaves with you. You and Rosario become proximate in the way of two men who work adjacent operations and find that the other is someone worth talking to. He recommends a restaurant in the Vuxeria market. You recommend a mechanic when his car needs work. He invites you to a Sunday lunch at his family's apartment. Not the Mafia, the city apartment, a different table. His wife makes pasta alla norma. His daughter, 4 years old, shows you a drawing of a horse that is anatomically ambitious for her age. He watches you look at it with the specific pride of a man who has decided, without stating it, that you are someone trustworthy enough to let inside the ordinary part of his life. You are not trustworthy. You are building a case that will take his uncle away for the rest of his natural life. You look at the drawing. You say, the legs are very good. She understands how weight works. Rosario says, she told me the horse is running away from something. I asked her from what. She said she didn't know yet. You eat the pasta. You compliment the wine. You take the last train back to Via Maqueda. The following morning you write the intelligence report. Rosario's role, his contacts, the contractors he manages, the financial channels. Everything the prosecution will need. You do not write about the horse. Some things do not belong in a report. You learned this before Sicily. Sicily just makes the line harder to locate. Month 11. The Mafia. The invitation to the Mafia comes in month 11. Not from Rosario. From Salvatore Greco, who passes it to you on a Wednesday morning as though it is a routine scheduling matter. Don Enzo's Sunday lunch, this week, you will come. You will come. Not would you like to. Not you are invited. You will come. In Sicily, this phrasing is not rudeness. It is inclusion. An invitation phrased as a fact is more respectful than a question, because it says, your presence is expected, not requested. You are already part of this. You write the message on a market receipt that night. Pellegrini's response comes the following morning. Confirm attendance. Document everything. Do not initiate conversation with Baresi directly. Let him come to you. The Mafia is 40 minutes outside Palermo on roads that narrow progressively until they are barely wide enough for one car, lined with dry stone walls and olive trees whose trunks are as wide as a man's reach. The property itself is beautiful in the way of things that have been functional for centuries. Thick walls, a courtyard with a fig tree at the center, long tables set in the shade. 18 people. 3 generations of connections, relationships, obligations folded into the social architecture of a Sunday lunch. Don Enzo moves through the courtyard slowly, greeting each person with a specific attention that makes it clear he has prepared for each conversation individually. He knows what each person needs to hear. He has been doing this for 32 years. He reaches you at the fig tree. He is shorter than you expected. 71 years old, white-haired, the specific unhurried quality of a man who has not needed to rush since before you were born. He shakes your hand. His grip is firm without demonstration. He says, Salvatore tells me you are from Catania originally. You say, yes. My mother was from Agrigento. He says, Agrigento. The temples. Did she take you there as a child? You say, every summer. She believed that Greeks built them for Sicilians to remember who they were before everything else happened to them. He looks at you for a moment. He says, your mother was a wise woman. He moves on. The lunch begins. You eat, you listen, you speak when drawn into conversation, you do not fill silences. 4 hours at the table. Wine and food and the specific pleasure of a long Sicilian Sunday that has been refined over decades into something that is simultaneously ordinary and ceremonial. Driving back to Palermo with Greco, you say nothing. Greco says nothing. Near the city, he says, Don Enzo asked about you afterward. You say, what did he ask? Greco says, he asked if you were the kind of man who stays. You say, what did you tell him? Greco says, I told him I thought so. You look at the road. Greco tells him yes, and he is right, because Marco Ferrara is exactly the kind of man who stays. The man underneath Marco Ferrara has a return ticket he has not thought about in months. What the Sundays cost. You go back to the Mafia 4 more Sundays. Each time the table is a little different. Different people, different combinations, different conversations, and each time Don Enzo finds a few minutes to talk to you specifically. Not about the organization. About Sicily, about history, about the particular stubbornness of a place that has been conquered 12 times and absorbed all 12 conquests without losing its essential nature. He talks about his father. About inheriting something you didn't build and the specific weight of that. About the obligation to people who trusted the institution before they trusted you personally. On the third Sunday, he says something you will spend a long time turning over. He says, the state and the Cosa Nostra have one thing in common. They both believe they are the legitimate authority. The difference is that we have never pretended otherwise. You say, and which is correct? He looks at you. He says, neither. But only one of them has the honesty to know it. He is wrong. He is also not entirely wrong. That combination, the thing that is wrong and contains something true, is harder to sit across from than a simple lie. In those 4 Sundays, you document everything. The conversations, the names, the organizational decisions that surface in the natural flow of discussion around a table where everyone already knows their place. You document twice, in memory and in the Rosticceria receipt the following morning, and Pellegrini confirms each one. On the 4th Sunday, Pellegrini's response contains one line. Prosecution team says we have enough. Preparing warrants. Estimated 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You fold the receipt and put it in your pocket and walk to Greco's produce company and do the day's work. 3 weeks becomes 4. 4 becomes 6. The warrant process moves at the pace of Italian federal procedure, which is thorough and unhurried and cannot be accelerated without introducing errors that defense attorneys will find. In week 7 of waiting, you receive a Sunday invitation to the Mafia. You go. The table is set differently this time. White tablecloth, good china, wine breathing. Only 12 people, and by the time lunch begins, it is 8, and by the time the pasta arrives, it is 2. You and Don Enzo. He pours the wine. He says, you've been in my city for 14 months. You should eat before you leave. The table. You eat the rigatoni. It is excellent. The ragu has been cooking for hours. Someone made this with the full intention that it would be excellent, which means someone knew this lunch was coming before you did. Don Enzo eats without hurry. He refills your glass. He says nothing for several minutes. Then, how long have you known we knew? You say, I suspected from month 9. Greco changed how he looked at me after a particular Sunday. The quality of his attention shifted. He nods. He says, month 3, actually. A man in Catania remembered your face. Not from your cover history, from a photograph circulated by the DIA 8 years ago in connection with a different investigation. A different name, a different case. Your face. Month 3. You have eaten at this table 5 times since month 3. You say, why? He sets down his fork with the precision of a man who has been considering how to answer this question for a long time. He says, the first officer you sent lasted 9 days. She was good but impatient. She asked questions that people here do not ask in the sequence she asked them. The second lasted 6 weeks. She was better. But she was performing. He looks at you. He says, you were not performing. By month 3, Marco Ferrara was not a role you were playing. He was a man who existed. And I found it interesting, genuinely interesting, to watch a man exist as someone else and wonder at what point the someone else becomes the man. You say, and what point is that? He says, when the knowledge stops being retrieved and starts being felt. Your mother's understanding of the temples. That was not retrieved. That was felt. You do not respond. He says, I am going to be arrested. I have known this was coming since the warrants were filed in Rome last week. Yes, we knew before you did. I am 71 years old. I will spend whatever time remains in a prison that is comfortable by Italian standards, and I will die there, and the organization will continue without me because it has always been larger than any one man. He picks up his fork again. He says, I asked you here because I wanted to have a meal with someone who understands what was at stake in the last 14 months. My men understood their piece of it. You understood the whole. He says, also, the ragu is very good today and it would be a shame to eat it alone. You finish the pasta. You drink the wine. Outside the stone walls, the olive trees stand in the October light the way they have stood for 200 years, which is to say without urgency and without explanation. The morning after Sunday. The warrants execute on a Monday morning. You were extracted Sunday evening, 2 hours after the lunch ended, by Pellegrini in an unmarked car on a road between olive groves. You got in the car without looking back at the Mafia. You did not look back because if you looked back you would see the table being cleared, the white tablecloth folded, the good china carried inside, and the fig tree in the courtyard standing in the evening light, and you knew that seeing those things would cost you something you did not have a word for and could not afford to pay on a road between olive groves with Pellegrini waiting. Monday morning. 43 arrests across Palermo, Trapani, and Agrigento. The Baresi organization's entire operational structure, documented by one undercover officer over 14 months, executed simultaneously across 3 provinces. Don Enzo Baresi is arrested at the Mafia at 7:12 a.m. He is eating breakfast. He is alone. The staff has been sent away, which means he sent them away, which means he had prepared for this morning in advance with the same care he brought to every Sunday lunch. He signs the arrest document without reading it. His attorney arrives 19 minutes later. Rosario is arrested at his apartment in Palermo. His wife is there. His daughter is asleep. The arresting officers, following the protocol Pellegrini arranged, wait in the hallway while Rosario says goodbye to his family inside the apartment. The protocol stipulates 5 minutes. He takes 4. Salvatore Greco is arrested at the produce warehouse at 6 a.m. before the morning deliveries begin. He does not resist. He does not speak. He sits in the back of the car with the specific dignity of a man who has known since month 3 that this car was eventually coming. 51 total arrests. 37 charges. The prosecutorial case, built on 14 months of documented testimony from a single undercover officer, is described by the chief prosecutor of the Palermo DIA as the most complete dismantling of a Cosa Nostra mandamento since the Maxi Processo. You give your debrief in a secure facility outside Rome over 7 days. On the 7th day, Caruso shakes your hand. He says, "You got to the table." You say, "He said it for me." Caruso says, "That's not how we'll write it in the report." You say, "I know what the ragu means." The psychological evaluation runs 6 weeks. Standard protocol for insertions longer than 12 months. The evaluator is a woman named Dr. Ferretti. Her name, the first time she says it, produces a half-second of the specific confusion that follows a long cover, the moment where your name and the name you have been living want to occupy the same space. She notes it. She says, "How long does it take, when you wake up in the morning, to know which name is yours?" You say, "It depends on the morning." She says, "What does it depend on?" You say, "Whether I dreamed in Sicilian." She writes something down. Don Enzo Baresi receives a 22-year sentence. He is 71 years old. His attorneys argue health considerations. The judge acknowledges them and imposes the sentence regardless. Rosario receives 9 years. He will be 47 when he is eligible for release. His daughter will be 13. Greco receives 6 years. He is 60 years old. You read the sentencing documents in an apartment in a city you were reassigned to after the operation. You read them in order, the way you would read a case file. Then you close the document and sit for a while. The horse in the drawing was running away from something. She said she didn't know yet from what. She will be older when her father comes home. She will know more about what things run from. That knowledge arrives whether or not you want it to, in every life, in every family, regardless of what table anyone sat at. 3 months after the operation closes, a package arrives at the FBI field office in Rome, forwarded through channels to your current posting. Inside, a bottle of Nero di Evola, the same vintage as the wine at the last Sunday lunch, and a card. The card says, in Sicilian, "A guest who eats well honors the table." The table remembers. No signature. You put the bottle on a shelf. You do not open it. You are not sure what opening it would mean. You are not sure what not opening it means either. Some objects arrive carrying a weight that has no instruction for how to set it down. The Baresi organization restructured within 10 months. A new capo, younger, with different methods and the same territory. The construction networks, the legitimate business fronts, the Sunday lunches, all of it continuing in a reconfigured form, because organizations do not mourn their leaders. They replace them. You are back at work. Different country, different case, different language. The Italian you carry has a Sicilian inflection now that it did not have before, and sometimes in the field someone from the south hears it and looks at you with a question they do not ask. You do not explain it. There are things that belong to the person you were in Sicily that have not fully returned to the person you are here. Not Marco Ferrara specifically. Something more particular than a name, the way of reading a room that Palermo taught you, the patience with a specific texture, the knowledge of what a Sunday table means when someone has spent time setting it. The knowledge that being expected is not the same as being trapped. Don Enzo set that table knowing you were a federal agent. He set it with good china and a bottle breathing and a ragu that had been cooking for hours. He invited you to eat before you left. Before. Not if. You have thought about that word for months. Before implies you were always going to leave. That the leaving was not in question, only the timing. That the whole 14 months, in his understanding, was a man in transit, through his city, through his organization, through his Sunday lunches, who was always going to arrive somewhere else eventually. And he fed you well for the journey. That is either the most generous thing anyone has ever done for you in the field, or it is the most precise thing. You have not decided which. The bottle is still on the shelf.